Good evening, folks. What's happening? Welcome back to the channel. This is the starting 11 prediction for tomorrow's game against Red Star Belgrade in Serbia. The Europa League campaign gets underway tomorrow. It's the competition that none of us wanted to be in, but everybody thinks we're better suited to. It kicks off with a difficult game away from home in a place like Belgrade. This is known as an intimidating venue. It is that stadium you see with the big long tunnel underground. They have an intimidating atmosphere by all accounts. This represents a tough game for Celtic because we know what Celtic can be like away from home in intimidating atmospheres. Again, there may be a sense that Red Star Belgrade are not among Europe's elite names and we should fancy ourselves to go and get a result, but it's those sorts of games that have tripped Celtic up time and time again in Europe. So we come into it off the back of that 4-0 win over Partick Thistle at the weekend, where there was another protest against the Celtic board in the form of a display before the game. Again, the cameras panned to the CEO and the CFO in the director's box at Firhill, and they were looking at their phones at the time. I shared this on Twitter the other day there. I don't think that was a great look for them. What are they supposed to do? I don't know. Just look ahead as normal, but for the two of them to bury their heads in their phones, I don't think it was a good look. Again, we're still waiting on any sort of real, meaningful, transparent communication from the Celtic board. There has been a request from the supporters in terms of the open letter that was signed by so many Celtic supporters clubs, so many outlets, so many fan media outlets, so many supporters groups. They gave us the statement, which by all accounts in all quarters was dismissed because of the content of it. Since then, there's been no further communication, and I think that beggars belief, really. But that's what you come to expect from the Celtic board, and I think that's why we find ourselves where we are. So we're going to get to the football in a minute, and I know that some of you may well be sick, fed up listening to the discussion around the board, but I think it's a very important discussion that needs to stay at the top of the agenda. We can't just let this slide and let this dissipate. I think there's real meaningful change that is demanded here, and I think for Celtic to move forward and progress, I think there has to be changes in the way that things are done, and I think that means we have to keep talking about it. We have to keep the conversation going. I think there's important discussions to be had around the subsequent protests. We'll see what happens in the build up to this game against Hibs at Celtic Park on Saturday. That represents the first home game since the fallout in August, since the statement, since the fan action. So that'll be interesting to see what unfolds on Saturday. But I think it's important that we keep this as part of the agenda and we keep it top of mind, because I think what the board want to do as part of their ignoring it is hope that it just goes away. That's what they've done time and time again over the years. But I think this is different, and I think it's up to us to keep talking about it and keep it part of the agenda moving forward. Now then, looking at Crvena Zvezda, or Red Star Belgrade as they are better known in English. They played Partizan at the weekend. They won 2-1 away from home. That's their big rivals in Belgrade. I think they could have won the game more comfortably. I watched the highlights of it this morning, 12-minute highlight package. I thought they had chances to win the game. There was an unbelievable goal line clearance from Partizan late in the game, which prevented it going to 3-1. The Partizan goalkeeper, made a brilliant save, tipped onto the post as well in the dying embers of the game. So I think they could have won that more comfortably. They are sitting top of the Serbian league as well. I think one thing that stood out looking at the profile of their team is that they do have some really experienced players. It's maybe a bit of an aging side, certainly in the front line. They've got Marko Arnautovic, who's well known to everybody from his time with various teams in England. He's 36 years of age now. His strike partner at the weekend, Katai, is 34 years of age. The captain, Ivanic, is 32. So there is some experienced pros in there. You would expect them to put up a tough test for us, particularly with them being the home team tomorrow. But I think for Celtic, regardless of the output from Red Star, we're going to have to perform very, very well. I think the big games this season so far have been a real letdown for us, and I think an away game in European competition, the first game, this is a big test for us, as well as the atmosphere. The level that Red Star are at is to be seen. I don't think most of us have got a real gauge of where they're at. As I say, I've only watched that 12-minute highlight package from their game at the weekend, so it's very difficult to gauge them against Celtic. We'll see how that pans out tomorrow night. But I think dealing with the atmosphere and overcoming that psychologically and still performing to a high level will be as big a test as anything for the Celtic team tomorrow, because now this Celtic team has a different look to it. There's some new players there. We've lost players over the summer, and when you come to play in Europe, you really get a feel for where Celtic are at. We've had a late win against Kilmarnock where we didn't perform well, and a slightly better performance at the weekend against Partick Thistle, but they are in the division below it as a cup tie. So this is a much better barometer of where Celtic are at. So I think we've got to perform well tomorrow if we're to get a positive result to kick off the Europa League campaign. Now let's look at the Celtic lineup then. I think in goals, obviously, as a thought at the weekend, we did see a start for Viljami Sinisalo. He didn't have anything to do in the game, really, nothing of note anyway. I think he got a couple of crosses. Carter Vickers put him under pressure once or twice, which we'll maybe come back to in a minute when we talk about centre half. But Casper will come back into play in goals. At right back, even though Ralston is back in training, I expect it to be Colby Donovan. The manager's been very complimentary of his performances so far, rightly so, because I think he stood up and performed well coming into the team as a young player. We talked about him in the full-time reaction at the weekend as well with Martin. I think he's done well. I think you can see his qualities. I think he's sharper and better on the ball, I would say, than Tony Ralston. I think he's got a lot of attributes to his game. There's no doubt this is a big step up and a big test for him. It's not going to be plain sailing for a young player coming into it to play for Celtic, but it's another opportunity for him to go and impress. Let's hope he does that. Centre half, Carter Vickers and Scales, that is one area of the team that I got right at the weekend. Cameron Carter Vickers, I don't want to make more of something than there necessarily might be, but there's just been a few lapses recently, I think, since the start of this season. A few strange lapses, and who knows what you can put that down to. Is it his condition with the number of injuries he's had and maybe something niggling him that's putting a doubt at the back of his mind? Is it that he's coming to the end of his Celtic cycle as well and he's maybe lost that mental edge? I don't know, but I think those two times where he was dispossessed late in the first half on Sunday were just strange in terms of what you're used to with Carter Vickers. And I think, like I say, since the start of this season, there's just been a few wee lapses. He's been such a consistent performer for Celtic throughout his time at the club. But I just think those moments raise a few question marks. Let's hope he's got a strong performance in him tomorrow. Scales scored a brilliant header from the corner, took it short, Nygren whipped it in. It's a bullet header into the top corner, and I think he had to mop up for Carter Vickers a couple of times, but I don't expect any change to that area of the team. Now, I just want to make a quick point here, because when you look at this Celtic squad, there's a few things that don't really add up, and we know because of how the transfer business went in the summer, things are a bit of a mess. Jemai Simpson-Pusey came in from Man City, and Brendan Rodgers seems to be saying that he's not one for just now, but we've only got him on a 12-month loan deal. It looks like he's just not part of the plans at all. It's really strange what's going on in that area of the pitch in terms of Pusey, but also after Carter Vickers and Scales, you've only got Dane Murray there. And that's why I think at the weekend I fancy Carter Vickers and Scales to stay in the team. And I know you want continuity in your centre halves, but I thought there could have been a change there in a game like that at the weekend, and it wasn't to be. So I don't think there's any doubt that the centre half pairing moving forward through this season is going to be Carter Vickers and Scales much more often than not. Left back, Kieran Tierney. I thought Sriracha might start at the weekend. I was wrong. Kieran completed 90 minutes, which is really, really good for him psychologically. Brendan Rodgers spoke about it after the game. I think it's the first time in, I think it's January 2024, the last time Kieran Tierney completed 90 minutes. So I think the manager's right. Psychologically, that is big for him. I think it was an all-round decent performance from him. A couple of really nice long-range passes in the first half. Again, bigger test defensively, certainly in this game. He'll have to be switched on. He'll have to be sharp. But hopefully that psychological barrier of completing 90 minutes for the first time in nearly 18 months will do him the world of good. And hopefully we can see him complete 90 minutes more often than not, more consistently now. Midfield, there was no changes there at the weekend, so I don't expect any tomorrow. McGregor, Hatate, Negrin. I thought Sunday was the ideal opportunity to change up the midfield, get some of the guys in that haven't had much game time so far this season. The McCowans, the Engels. I know McCowan did come off the bench, so did Engels. McCowan got on the score sheet with a lovely finish, but I thought it might have been a chance just to maybe rest a McGregor, rest a Hatate, take Negrin out. But again, it wasn't to be. The manager saw fit to keep that three, and again, I think that points to the fact that that's who he wants to play there this season. That's the connections that he wants to be kept and growing throughout this season. So I think that's the midfield we'll see tomorrow. And again, it's a much bigger test for them. They have underperformed in the big games so far this season. The two games against Kairat, the game at Ibrox, there was a lot left to be desired in terms of the midfield performance. So they've got a lot to do tomorrow. They need to perform much better in these bigger games, and I think away from home in Europe, they're going to have to be switched on against the ball as much as they are with how they use it when we get on the ball. Front three, again, this is just so difficult to judge in this Celtic squad at the minute, because on the right-hand side, we are so limited in options. We've got Yang, who started at the weekend, got on the score sheet with the strangest goal in the world, where nobody celebrated it for about 4 seconds before we realised it did actually go in off the defender. But again, his level of performance has never convinced you that he can start in a difficult away match in Europe for Celtic. So I don't think the manager can really be considering him as a starter in this game, and that leaves us with the only natural right winger at Celtic is James Forrest. So I think that's who has to play there tomorrow. Can you try and make a case for Daizen to play there? I don't think so, because we've rarely ever seen it in his time with us the last 4 years or so. We've already watched Balikwisha play there against Kilmarnock. It didn't work out at all. Taneke is playing so well on the left-hand side that he has to stay there. So James Forrest is the only option that I can see on the right-hand side. Could you make an argument to put Negrin out there? You could, but his performance at Ibrox on the right-hand side and the lack of pace in his game, I think makes that a no-go as well. So it's got to be Jamesy on the right-hand side. And again, that is just one of the glaring areas where you think we are really, really short. As I say, left-hand side, Taneke, what a performance again. Again, we know it's Partick Thistle away from home in the Cup, but impressive. He just wants to make things happen. He wants to get at defenders, link up with the striker. Iheanacho was at the weekend, some lovely touches, some lovely 1-2s in the lead up to the goal specifically. But again, he's just so positive, he's just so direct, and that's what you need from a Celtic wide player. Again, though, big step up for him. Can he do it on this stage? These are the games that make you as a Celtic player. Big games in Europe, the big games domestically, which he's not had any of yet, just been in the door. This is an opportunity for him to go and impress in an away game in Europe, and shows that he can do it on that stage as well. But all promising signs from Taneke so far. Through the middle, I can't make my mind up if it's going to be Iheanacho or if it'll be Daizen. I'm just going to go with Daizen. I think Kelechi's probably not there yet in terms of his sharpness and his condition to start in this game. I think that will come. He's another one who maybe in a similar vein to Tierney hasn't been in the routine of playing 90 minutes week in and week out, or 2 or 3 times a week over the last couple of years. So I think he's short of being in a condition to start. That's why I've gone with Daizen through the middle. Still not convinced with Daizen's headspace though. I think when he came off the bench at the weekend, he had a couple of really overhit passes and just didn't get things right. And I don't think his body language looks particularly brilliant just now. Again, I know that's maybe reading a bit too much into things. I think it's dead easy to analyse and overanalyse somebody's body language when you know there's speculation about their future. And I think Daizen, we know that there was going to be a drop-off from last season and the heights of last season, but I'm just not sure where he's at in terms of his headspace. This is a big game away from home in Europe. We're going to need him to work his socks off like he always does for Celtic. But again, I think we're unsure where we stand with Daizen, and I think through the middle we will see Iheanacho off the bench, and I think Iheanacho can grow into a good player for us. I just think he's going to need time to get into condition. Now, looking at that 11 away from home in Europe, it would give you concerns, but there are promising signs in it. I think if we can get another good performance from Taneki, we can get a threat. We can carry a threat on the break. We can hurt Red Star Belgrade. But again, you're just unsure with Daizen through the middle. How it's going to function on the right-hand side with Forrest there is, in my opinion, the only real option to start in the game. And young Colby Donovan as well, a big test for him in Europe. So that's the 11 I think Brendan Rodgers will go with. If you disagree, you can let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We're very close to 46,000 subscribers. I want to put up on the screen now as well the progress to 50,000. We put so much into the channel, the quicker we can get to 50,000, which is a really significant milestone for us, the better. So if you watch the channel all the time and you haven't already subscribed, all you have to do is log in to YouTube and click the red subscribe button below. It's absolutely free, and I'll see you tomorrow after the game with the full-time reaction. Thank you.